Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today I want to talk about the light attack nerfs coming and the change to affect durations. Zenimax released a combat changes article yesterday. You can also find a news article on alcasthq. I talked about this a little bit more in detail. I will update all the builds on alcasthq, of course, after we have tested the stuff on the test server. And on ESO-up.com, you can also find a full news section. We post ESO news every day. You can also subscribe to this via the Dwemer bot, the Discord bot. We do have a Discord server, it's all here. We also do have community builds on ESO-up.com. You can sort them after most viewed, most liked, most recently updated. It's all here. You can also create your own build and share it with friends. Link in the description. So, what's all the fuss about? There has been a lot of talking. I will not read the whole text, but I will try to summarize the whole thing. So they're basically trying to nerf DPS. That's all they're doing. Now, they said the main focus in update 35 are twofold. Improving accessibility to the game's combat by increasing the duration of outgoing ability effects, such as damage over time, buffs and debuffs, and the continuation of attempt to quell some of the obscene damage production at high end. My 2 cents, it's their own fault that DPS is so high because they have implemented completely overpowered sets and buffs over the last 2 years. It's the only reason why the DPS is so high. It doesn't, like, yes, weaving and some other stuff has also to do with it, but it's not the main problem. Now, let's take a look at the weaving part. So they're trying to nerf light attack weaving. Because it's basically, new players often have issues with weaving, and endgame players weave perfectly, increasing their DPS like crazy. Now, my take on this is you will still have to weave like before. If you want to maximize DPS even after these nerfs, you still need to weave, so it doesn't solve the problem. Now, what are they saying? For reference, in many of ESO's high-end experiences and activities, the average build sees roughly 15 to 20% of their overall damage coming from light attacks alone. This is correct. It's insanely high, too high. While testing these adjustments internally, we have seen a reduction of 6 to 11% overall damage. So that's actually quite a fat nerf. So instead of 15 to 20, you might do 5 to 10% of light attack damage. Now, a history lesson. Around 2 or 3 years ago, light attacks actually dealt a lot less damage. Then they changed how light attacks scaled. And light and heavy attacks started to deal an insane amount of damage. So basically, they're just reverting light and heavy attacks back to how they were like 3 years ago. And that's it, right? There is really not much more to it. You still have to weave. If you want to compete in endgame, you still have to weave like you did before. Nothing changed there. And that's why I don't think the ceiling will be reduced. The gap will still be the same, because to get good damage, you will still have to weave. To proc all the enchantments, the light attacks still deal good damage, and so on. Then, combat effects. Here's the good part. Instead of 10-second rotations, you might have 20 or 30-second rotations. By extending the duration, we hope to reduce the stress of many combat rotations, allowing for you to focus more on the actions in front of you rather than the actions of juggling buffs and debuffs. A lot of other MMOs have like 1 minute, 2 minute rotations, right? Because damage over time effects last long, or there's a long cooldown on a skill. So ESO is very fast paced. They also mention action per minute. Now, instead of having a 10 second rotation where you use your spammable maybe 2 times or 3 times, and then you reapply the damage over time effects, buffs and debuffs. The duration might now be 30 seconds. So you might use your spammable like 15 to 20 times in a rotation, because you have to use your dots less because they last longer. The action per minute will still be the same. You just use your spammable more and you use your dots less because they last longer. And that's pretty much the gist of it, right? I am not opposed to these changes. I don't mind that weaving, like the light attack damage, deals less damage. But you will still have to weave perfectly to get the highest damage. And the combat effects, maybe a 20-second or 30-second dot time might be better. We will see how the game feels. But first and foremost, we have to wait for the test server before we judge these changes. Like, I've seen a lot of people complain and go crazy already. Let's wait for the test server and see how this goes. Like I said, I'm not opposed to these changes, but I do feel like they missed the point. They're basically using the gap between noobs and pro players is big. Excuse to nerf DPS. Because, yeah, that's basically all this is. Even though it's their own fault that DPS is so high because of the busted buffs and debuffs they implemented and the sets they implemented over the last 2 years. Yeah, these are my 2 cents. Let me know in the comment section below what do you think about this. I will cover this in more, like, in detail once this goes live, because then we actually know the exact numbers. Thanks for watching and have a nice day. Cheers.